Okay, so welcome to the Lab 6 video. We're going to go through the joints lab at this point. And what we're focused in on right now is skull, because actually specifically it's the calvaria of a skull, which is you could think of it as the flip top lid of the skull. And we're focusing in on this set of bones because we're looking first at the fibrous joints. Okay, so remember that there are three ways of classifying joints based on structure. And when you're classifying joints based on structure, you're looking at what's holding the bones together, what material is holding the bones together, and you're looking for the presence or absence of a joint cavity. So if we're looking at fibrous joints in this set, then we're looking at joints that are held together by fibrous connective tissue, and we're looking at joints that lack a joint cavity. Okay, so our first one here is the suture. Okay, a suture is a fibrous joint that you only find between the bones of the skull. Okay, and you may remember that we had a coronal suture here. We'll do a little bit of practical review. So coronal suture, a sagittal suture, we have the lambdoid suture, at least part of it back here. Can't really see too much of the squamous suture on these bones, so we'll skip that one. Now, if you look at the structure of the suture, you'll see in your textbook that it's described as being interdigitated. Okay, and interdigitated basically means, if you see what I'm doing with my fingers, okay, where you're interlocking your fingers, that's interdigitating. And you can see that here on the bone very nicely, where you have little pieces of bone that seem like they're interlocking with each other. And that's one of the mechanisms that keeps these bones in a kind of rigid relationship. Okay, the other issue that you have is that the connective tissue fibers in this fibrous joint are very short. And the take-home message with fibrous joints is the shorter the fibers, the less movement you have. And these fibers are so short that there's actually no movement between these bones. So this would be functionally classified as a synarthrotic or immovable joint. As we go to the next panel here, we have an image of a syndesmosis. Okay, and a syndesmosis is a place where you have ligaments connecting two bones. Okay, the particular ligament we have here is the distal tibiofibular ligament, and you can see relatively short fibers here as well. Okay, so we're not going to have a lot of movement associated with this joint. Okay, now other syndesmoses are longer. If you look in your lab manual or in your textbook to the the radius and the ulna, and to this area between the tibia and fibula, you'll see a structure called the interosseous membrane. This is also an example of a syndesmosis, but much longer fibers. Okay, so again, the longer the fibers, the more movement you have. Okay, so those interosseous membranes would have a different classification. This syndesmosis would be considered synarthrotic by most textbooks. The interosseous membrane, depending on the textbook you look at, would be either amphiarthrotic, which means partially movable, or diarthrotic, which means freely movable. Okay, so again, the length of the fibers determines how much movement you have. The last one here is the gomphosis, and the gomphosis is the special set of fibers and short ligaments, periodontal ligaments, that connect the tooth to the bone where its socket is. Okay, so in this particular instance, we're looking at one of the incisors and the mandible from the orientation. Okay, so again, very short fibers, so we have a synarthrotic joint here. Okay, so gomphosis only found between the teeth and the bone where their socket is. Okay, so those are our three types of fibrous joints.